It's time to build momentum, to interrupt and end race-based hatred and violence.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here. I'm so glad that you are here for today's episode of Momentum. This series is all about reminding us every week to take specific action, to take intentional action, to learn something new or to do something different, to interrupt or end race-based hatred and violence. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm the founder and the moderator of the Facebook group, What Is Mine to Do to Interrupt Race-Based Hatred and Violence. And I am also the president of Intentional Inclusion Incorporated. And we work with organizations and leaders nationwide on strategic priorities and leadership development that helps to create inclusive and effective workplaces or communities. So, and just in case this is your first time with Momentum, this is usually 15 minutes-ish. Like it could be 10 minutes, it could be 18 minutes, but 15 minutes-ish, just to focus in on one idea, one inspiration, one tool, technique, or tip to take into our lives in the coming week. And this week, Momentum is inspired by this quote from Barbara Holmes. Today, the limits of rights language have been reached. Rights can't address dysfunction, depression, and low self-esteem. Rights don't have the moxie or the power to uplift whole communities across class lines. Rights are merely recitations of what ought to be in a society of persons who are presumed to be equal. Barbara Holmes. And I will repeat it. Here we go. Today, the limits of rights language have been reached. Rights can't address dysfunction, depression, and low self-esteem. Rights don't have the moxie or the power to uplift whole communities across class lines. Rights are merely recitations of what ought to be in a society of persons who are presumed to be equal. So why do I want to talk about this quote? I think so often when we are talking about race-based hatred and violence, people start focusing in on rights, right? It's civil rights. Oh, it's human rights. Oh, it's, it's rights. And so that's not to say that is an incorrect statement. I'm not saying that, but I like the way that Barbara Holmes starts this quote, right? She says, the limits of rights language have been reached. So when you are focusing on rights, there are times to do that. But, with What Is Mine to Do, we're really focused on our individual relationships with other people or groups of people. And usually that is, in a conversational environment or in a workplace environment. And so it becomes troublesome and it becomes a pathway to quickly go into debate about who's right and who's wrong and what rights are you talking about anyway. And often people don't even want to talk about rights because they'll say, well, especially if you live in the US and in Canada, well, everybody has the same rights. And so rights focused language does present some limitations. And if you were trying to have a conversation about the reason that you are focused on interrupting or ending race-based hatred and violence, there are times when you might want to center it or ground that conversation around something other than rights. So maybe you move your focus from rights to relationship, right? We're having this conversation because the relationship that we have, or the relationship that the leaders in our organizations have with the employees they supervise. And that the focus on ending unconscious bias or bringing people's attention to unconscious bias based on race is in order to help strengthen the relationships that they have with the members or the patients or the customers that they interact with. And that's a very different conversation than everybody has the right to be treated well. It's, if you are going to be respectful of all of our customers who come into the store, then you need to really understand how you're reacting to race or ethnicity. Maybe you move the conversation from rights to relevance. So a lot of times when we focus our conversation on rights, people just think of or immediately go back to, well, the Civil Rights Act in the 60s was passed and everybody has rights. Or the idea of rights is about war, or is about injustice and discrimination and what's wrong. And so you want to center or ground your conversation in what is relevant to your organization or your family or your classroom right now. So if you're at a family gathering during the holidays, you don't want to center the conversation around rights necessarily. You might instead make more traction if you focus that conversation on what's relevant in your family now. Maybe there is a cousin or a sibling or a close family friend who has married someone of a different racial ethnic group, and it would be relevant to be acknowledging that and to be talking about things that I've learned that I didn't know before. This person was a part of our family. That's relevance. You can shift the conversation from rights to responsibility. This is especially easy to do in the workplace or in a community setting, because everyone has some responsibility in the way they communicate, in the way they make decisions, and the way that they execute on the vision or the mission. And so you can, again, center or ground the conversation in the context of who has what responsibilities. And of course, you can shift from centering or grounding conversation about a group of people having certain rights to respect. And if we are in a situation where we are wanting to ensure that everyone is treated with respect, then you can talk about behaviors, what you do and say, or what you don't do and don't say. Whereas if you're grounding it in rights, it becomes a political hotbed. and moves away from the conversation that we are trying to have in terms of what is mine to do. How do I engage with you? How do I engage with the people I work with or go to church with? How do I engage with the neighbors in my neighborhood association, etc.? So again, I'll repeat the quote one more time because I want you to take it with you this week and be thinking about and paying attention to when you are in the conversation that is somehow related to race-based hatred and violence. Or what's your go-to? Do you just kind of automatically go to conversation about rights, and some people don't have them and others do, and what we have to fight for in terms of our rights? When instead do you go to relationship or relevance, respect or responsibility? These are the things that are going to make a difference in your conversation, choosing the grounding or the anchor for your conversation in relationship to who you are having the conversation with and what you are trying to get from the conversation. So, one final time, this quote by Barbara Holmes. Today, the limits of rights language have been reached. Rights can't address dysfunction, depression, and low self-esteem. Rights don't have the moxie or the power to uplift whole communities across class lines. Rights are merely recitations of what ought to be in a society of persons who are presumed to be equal. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm so glad you joined me for this episode of Momentum, and I will see you again next Monday night at 8 p.m. Central Time.